this thing work? Hello? Ready? Great, cool, thank you. Firstly, thank you all for coming. It's really fantastic to be here in person, and I was joking that I'm not really uncomfortable public speaking anymore, but most of my public speaking is usually on Zoom, which is very different from a room full of 100 people. But anyway, fantastic to see folks here, and really excited to do this App Store launch, and hopefully it's one of many. And thank you again all for attending. Just a little bit about the Beacon Developer Network and the App Store, and what we would like to do with all of this. So just since we started Beacon since 2014, I think it's really been an amazing journey. When we set out to do this, we thought about creating this transparent platform from a lot of our experiences through working at banks. And just like Mark and I were started at Goldman, and by happenstance, we worked on a platform. And I think what was super interesting back then was that you build a platform that has the data, the analytics, and the applications, and then you find everything just becomes an API and a library, and having this connected platform which everybody can contribute to just makes it so much easier to actually deliver value to the business. And as we built out stuff for FX, and we added stuff for commodities, and then we found how do you integrate back office systems into that, and you do it for rates, and you find there's all these components that are exactly the same. Like you ingest data, you create market data, you plug it into your trades, you then have an interface to talk to the back office systems. You have pretty much the same tools that you can build on the risk management side for the front office, but you end up customizing them. And those are all apps sitting on this one platform. And for years, we spent our sort of careers going to JP Morgan, building the same thing, and then Bank of America. And again, a bunch of apps sitting on a platform, and our clients were other groups within those banks. But I think what we learned from that is if you set up these APIs right and you have a transparent platform, it's just enormous. Just the scale and the leverage you get out of that is enormous. And if you think about it, like I don't know how many folks are developers here, but you write a bunch of code, you write an application, and then you have to then deploy it, maintain it, support it, extend it. And if everybody does that separately for every application, just the amount of wastage in the infrastructure and management space essentially limits what you can do as a developer. You get crushed by the weight of your applications. So our goal here was to create this common platform that can take care of all of that for you. The applications sit on top of that, and so you can focus on really what's the thing that's your edge. And going back to this App Store, when we started doing this, we built a platform. We built this sort of single tenant platform that can be deployed into client environments, because we feel very strongly clients should own their own data, their own IP, and we give them all our code. And I think of this very much as the open source model, right? Like I think that's become super successful. You download an open source package, you can then integrate it into your system. And I think we think of Beacon exactly the same. We give you all our source code, but actually I'm going to ask another question. How many times do you actually change an open source package that you use? Don't, right? But actually, the fact that you can look through it and you can debug it and you can understand how that works is, I think, why people love open source so much. And that's what we wanted to create with Beacon as well. So sometimes people ask us, can we change your code? It's like, yes, you can, but often better not to. Just talk to us about it, right? And I think that's actually what's been super successful about it. But then the other thing we realized is as we build out this platform and we deploy it, how do we actually deliver applications to clients at scale? And in fact, we found that clients have their own apps that firstly they want to deploy to other groups within their teams and potentially even outside their companies. And that's very hard if you do not have a platform that can be lifted and shifted outside. So I think we worked with a bunch of folks here too to say, once you have analytics sitting on Beacon, you can just pick up that whole thing and shift it outside. And then you can fix the security issues. You can then also run the same things that are outside, inside. And taking that a little bit further, like our view of the App Store was, an app actually isn't just an app. It's application code, it's data, it's infrastructure that it runs on, and it's all the supporting components like batch jobs, compute jobs, and all these other things. And I think we are unique in the sense that we can package all of those up. So I think I'm really proud of the App Store team, Bua and Shambu and folks in Tokyo who've actually conceptualized this and said, like how do we actually in Beacon, since we have this cloud agnostic infrastructure framework, define a set of services where an application bundle can be not only the code, it can be the infrastructure services, the infrastructure components, like the cloud infrastructure associated with it, jobs that you need to maintain the data that your application needs, and a bundle of apps on top of it, right, and plugins. And so that's really what we think of the App Store. And if you think about it too, apps and data go hand in hand. And data also, we want to be able to break those black box silos, right? How hard is it to integrate outside data? Very hard. You take these literally CSV files, FTP, and like now maybe S3 buckets, but it fundamentally hasn't changed. What you want to do is associate that data with behavior. So I think if the data providers can give you analytics and objects that can interpret the data on your side, I think that's a huge benefit. So that's what we think of this data provider part of the App Store. And then similarly, service providers too, right? Like if you're, for example, an expert in model validation or commodities physical or settlements or accounting, if you can write to the Beacon APIs, then anyone who has Beacon, your integration in there is much quicker, easier to maintain, and also future-proof because we keep extending the platform. So super excited to see all our partners here on that. And then I think finally, I should probably take a breath or drink some water. The other thing we also found was as this whole ecosystem grows, it's the developers who keep it alive. Like who do you ask questions to? Like, the open source community, I think, again, is really what keeps it alive. You can see the people who contributed to something, you can talk to them, you can ask them questions. So I think this Beacon developer network is really what we think keeps this whole Beacon community alive too. So we've invested a lot in that. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But the whole point there is like we have certification, so you can get training courses through that. We'd love to sort of enable more of a community around that. So hopefully we'll do a lot more of these things. Because we're all working on the same problems in a way. We, of course, have like our special sauce, but a lot of the things that we face in trying to solve that is very, very similar. So hopefully we can create a lot more collaboration around that. But I'll turn it over to Rio now. But thank you folks very much, and really appreciate you all coming.
Well, thank you, Kirat, and thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Rio Shimizu, and I'll be your MC for the day. We're here because you as innovators and doers have asked us to provide a forum where you can share your perspectives on your journey of adopting Beacon at your respective firms, share your experiences, ideas, and best practices so that we could work together to innovate in ways that haven't yet been imagined. We firmly believe that a platform is only as successful as the utility it could provide you, and our success is measured by your success. And so we're delighted to be able to host this for you today. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that this is a hybrid event. That means some presenters will be remotely presenting live, some will be pre-recorded, and others will be in person live. So this is the first time we do this, and so there may be hiccups, and it might be that's a small price to pay for innovation. So please make note that we're using Slido for taking questions from the virtual attendees, which should be available directly from your Livecast portal. And please make sure to put in your name and contact info so that we can follow up with your questions afterwards. For the live presenters, we will attempt to make an interactive Q&A session at the end of each presentation, and we'll try to address as many questions as the speaker's time slot allows, but we'll have to kind of move on at every point. So without further ado, I'll pass the stage to our principal engineer and senior engineer who traveled all the way across the globe from Tokyo to walk you through our motivations for creating the App Store. Let's give a warm round of applause to Shambu and Bua.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'm really excited to be here in New York and also, introducing App Store. We will be joined later on by Bua, who will be doing the live demo. So fingers crossed. So let's first look at our contents for today. We'll start with an introduction of App Store, followed by a demo, and Bua will help us with that. Then we'll give you an insight into the architecture of App Store. The reason behind that is to really help you understand what this is all about, the inside out. And then after that, we'll talk about the benefits of App Store. And finally, we have a lot of apps and modules available in App Store. We'd like to showcase them to you. So a lot of exciting stuff. We hope to finish before our ending time, but we'll try to take as many questions as possible at the end. So let's move on. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the reason why we built App Store and what motivated the design decisions along the way. Now, I'll start with a quote. I believe some of you have heard about this. If the fonts are too small, I'll just read it out loud. "He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight," from Sun Tzu, the famous Art of War. Now, we're not warriors, but we believe that this quote is very relevant in the context of software engineering as well. And as engineers, we are constantly building software, and we are always tempted to build new things. But we believe that the decision about what to build and what not to build is extremely important for the businesses that we serve. And that is why we have always positioned Beacon as this buy and build on platform. We have always focused on creating a platform that's great to build on, and will always remain that way. We believe that the common core, as Kirat mentioned earlier on, is going to be important so that you can only focus on the last mile. Now, with the growing number of customers, though, what we have realized is that our customers can come from any part of the buy and build spectrum. Not everyone wants to build directly on top of Beacon. Some would just like to have a turnkey solution to a well-known business problem or workflow, so that they can install it directly from App Store. Or some may want to build their own stuff, but not everything. Right? They want to build on top of some off-shelf module, again, available somewhere. And this is the main driver. And that's why Beacon App Store is about giving you choices. More choices to directly buy apps that you need that solves your business problem directly, or also options to buy modules or libraries that you can build on. Now, it makes us very happy when we see that Beacon is at the center of our customers' development workflow. And also, whenever there are new apps available or onboarded onto Beacon, it makes us very happy. And that's also evident from the fact that we get a lot of enhancement requests, both for the platform, and also we are asked about the different modules or libraries that whether we can provide them on top of our FOSS foundation layer. And this is all great, really exciting. But we also recognize the fact that it's very impractical for us to build and support every single customized solution for all our customers. What would really be sustainable is we continue being this platform that can develop these SDKs, libraries, or frameworks so that our partners and customers can then build this last mile solution on top of. And this is the real reason. We want to open Beacon to customers and third-party app providers. So until now, it's been Beacon providing the platform and our customer developers developing on top of that. By opening Beacon to third-party app providers as well, first of all, we are inviting a new group of developers who develop on Beacon. And I'll explain in a bit why. We also want customers to be part of the ecosystem. So in summary, we want to create an ecosystem where we can not only buy and build, but also share and sell. Now, App Store is a very well-known concept, right? It's well-known. We have used it in smartphone, we have used it in our computers, and we believe that there are app providers and consumers. But we'd like you to think of Beacon App Store not only as a place where you can go and find third-party apps and analytics, but also as a forum where Beacon customers themselves, if they so wish, can list their own internal application and analytics. And it might be a bit strange, but yesterday there was a tweet from Jeff Bezos, and he was talking about, he actually posted a picture from 2006 when the media was very skeptic about Amazon trying to make a business out of AWS. And And that got me thinking, what if, at a time, I think 20 years ago, when Amazon was trying to scale their business out, if there were already something like AWS, some cloud service provider, would they create AWS? Most likely not, if you think rationally. But we don't know. I mean, it depends on the capabilities, what they wanted to build as well. But at least they would have had a choice, buy or build. But we know that they eventually built it because there were no such solutions. But then once they built it, it was an investment. It's a technological cost. That's a massive undertaking. They built the team, they created it, and now you have two choices. You either keep everything to yourself. In this case, the technology is a cost, or you can think of it as an investment. Obviously, there's always going to be a part which is very specific to your business. But if you create your technology stack in such a way that a common part of that can be externalized, then a big chunk of that technology cost now can be thought of as investment. And we know, as Kirat also mentioned, that we are solving the same problem again and again in different firms. So this is very unique, and we really like to highlight the fact that it's also customers that can take part in the ecosystem. And I believe that choice makes the ecosystem more sustainable and more valuable to all the players. Now, so much for the talking. I would like to invite my colleague Bua here for the demo of App Store. And before we do that, with App Store, we have two distinct set of users in mind. One is the Beacon end users. These are the business users, or even our developers in customer domains, who, from their perspective, again, App Store being a very well-known concept, and I think the expectation in terms of user interface and expectation in terms of behavior is pretty well known. So we want to be very intuitive about that. So from an end user's perspective, App Store should be what is expected to be. You should be able to go there, search for application, find the one you need, install them, and manage their life cycle. And we want to keep it very simple. But the other group, obviously, are developers. And by developers, I mean Beacon's own internal developers, our customer developers, and also third-party app developers. Now, as we think about the ecosystem, and Beacon has a lot of ways of developing applications, we wanted to make it even more inclusive. So we have added a lot of support for industry-standard application development framework. Not only can you use Beacon's native Glint application development framework, which is written with productivity in mind, you can also use your own in-house technology or whatever you have used and create applications. So we have made this process easier. We'll talk a bit about that later on. And also, we have provided all the kind of tooling that you'll need to package your application and deploy them so that they can, it's run once, write once, run anywhere. So with that, I'll pass it on to Bua. Let me switch it to the one. So there you go. Before that, Bua is the face behind our Beacon desktop. She created and maintains it. So it's great to have her here. So first of all, Bua is now wearing the hat of an end user. So this is the Beacon App Store. You can access it from the left panel of Beacon Desktop. And you can search for the application that you want with keyword. So in this case, Bua is searching for a plotting application. By the way, you can also filter out by publisher or categories and all that. And once you find an app or alternatives, you can click on them. And you can see the screenshots. You can see very description about the application. You can find out the publisher support model. Most likely, this will link to some help URL as well. So basically, you'll have all the information. You can also have videos and everything embedded so that you can see at least what the app is all about, whether it solves your problems or not. And you can also switch between different tabs to show pricing information, versions of the app available, and the change log. You can also see various installation of the app. So in this particular case, Beacon Plot Pro is already installed in the domain. So let's try to find an app which is not installed. And let's try to install it, maybe. Okay, app log. Yeah, app log is another Glint app that we wrote to show you the logs of when the application startup goes down, the actual log of terminated and running apps. So it gives you an option to install it for yourself or for the entire domain. So let's install it for everyone. It lets you choose different things that you can customize. But basically, you can choose the database that it runs against, and there you go. it is installed. So once the application is installed, as you'd expect, you can go to the launcher and you can scroll down and run it. And then this is like any other Beacon app that you run today. You've created or Beacon provides as is. So there you go. It came out and looks like Bua has done a lot of practice today. So it has a lot of. So now with that, let's have Bua now wear the hat of a developer. And let's assume that she has a fantastic idea that she wants to materialize, and she wants to develop an application in a matter of hours as opposed to days. So as a developer, the first thing we'd do, again, as we expect, is to go to the IDE. Let's go to the Beacon IDE or Classic IDE. And we have provided a simple utility. It's called Scaffold app, and you can find it in the Beacon's main library, WST master. You can open it in your IDE and just F9 it, execute it. And there you go. It's a simple utility where you can think of it as a tool to create a project. And you can give it a name, demo app, and the second item, project type. So here, now, as you can see, we have added options for our templates for various kinds of project types. And these are the different project types that we, as app developers, thought that we would need them. Or we also thought that maybe our customers may want all the solution, but this is in no way an exhaustive solution that will be available. A lot of this will be dependent upon your feedback as well. Now, as app providers, the first thing is we want flexibility in terms of architecture. So from that perspective, we wanted to have support for, obviously, Glint with various backends. And we also wanted to have support for industry standard application development frameworks. For example, it's very popular these days to use React.js, or there are a lot of these frameworks. And so that's why we added support for React.js. And you can use React to, let's say, customize your UI. And you can run it with Beacon's Python backend. So that way, it's pretty much, you can use Beacon Analytics right away. Or you can, if you wish, you can use it with other backends as well. And we have added just an example of other backend, which is Node.js-based backend, which is also very popular. But again, this is not an exhaustive list. So maybe, as an app provider, you already have some technology inside your firm. And it probably uses an entirely different technology stack. What you can do is, instead of spending time on porting this to Beacon, you can also create a Docker image where you can put all the dependencies, everything together, and ship it as a container. And that's why we added support for Dockerized apps. Or maybe, as app providers, you are not only interested in what we call the interactive apps, those that contain user interface. You probably have expertise in writing libraries, quant libraries, or certain kind of libraries. So you may want to just publish some module along with your source code and everything in a repo form. And that's how Beacon distributes source code as well, because we believe that transparency in source code is very important. So if you want to do that, you can publish what you call a repo module. Or maybe you are not too interested in showing the source code. Or maybe you are writing something in a compiled language, like C++ or something. In such a case, you might want to package all your pre-built scripts, libraries into a package, and also publish that as a module, in which case, upon installation, it will be present in the Beacon runtime environment in every host. So we have a lot of options here. But for today, I think we do not have too much time, and we have to create an application. So Bua will most likely choose Glint. And with that, let's create the project. So with that, what it did was basically it understood the project type. And different project types have obviously different kind of files, folder structure, but basically have a common set of files and folders. So in this particular case, Bua's project got created here. It's called demo app, and it created a bunch of files. And you could, in the case of Glint app, it always contains this file, app.py. And if you F9 it, it just shows a hello world kind of app. The idea is that you just know that it's working. Now, Bua has some idea to make this app better. So let's add some logic here. So what Bua is doing now is in Beacon Glint, we have a component called virtualized table. And it lets you display data in a grid format. And recently we added a function to render it in the server side so that it can be lazily loaded in the front end. That's how you can load data with millions of rows without problem. So let's say she wants to write an application that makes use of this, and then in our IDE she executes it. So there you see, it seems to be working. Obviously, in the real world, you'll be doing a little bit more than that, but for now, let's say this is what we want to publish to our internal user. And one great thing about Glint is exactly this situation. Like your business user will come with a situation, you quickly want to write something and deliver it to the business and repeat. And we have made it easier to follow this model. So now, every application of Beacon has a what we call the manifest file. And in the manifest file, we define, it's automatically generated for you, but you can change different information. You can also think of it as a packaging framework. You can say, okay, include in my app. By default, we know what things to include in your package. But if you want to add additional, let's say, data or additional metadata, you can do so by modifying this file. And every Beacon project also comes with a script, published.py. We wanted to make the script that is just F9-able. You should be able to F9. It should do the right thing. So let's F9 it. So it looks like it has been published successfully. In the real world, obviously, you'll be committing it, doing code review and all that. But we also wanted to make sure that in dev mode, you can do it quickly. So with that, if you go to the App Store, now you can see that there's a demo app that Bua published. If you click it, it comes with some dummy screenshots and everything available. And there you go. It's the exact same way. You can install it for the domain and run it. Now, we'll see in a while what exactly happened when Bua hit publish. Because there's a misconception that because we use terms such as publish, and this feels like it's sending my application data or my application code somewhere else. But that's very far from being true. So we'd like to explain in the next slide a little bit about the architecture so that you can understand what's going on there and feel comfortable about using App Store. So thank you, Bua. We'll move on to the next slide. PowerPoint, please. Now the architecture, and here I will start. There are two main keywords here, or concepts. One, App Store. I'll explain in a bit rigor what that is, and an app registry. This is a concept I'm going to explain now. You can think of app registry as a repository of application that can manage different versions of different application, and it's usually maintained by some entity and with some kind of policy. So every Beacon domain by default contains a Beacon registry, which is internal to it. We may call it the internal Beacon registry, domain registry. In this particular case, we have just written local registry, but they're all internal registry. So you can see on the right-hand side, there are 3 Beacon domains, domain A, domain B, and domain C. And each one of them has local registries, local registry A, B, and C. Now, these local registries are only available inside the domain. So, and the developers, those are only the developers from that domain can publish application to local registry. And by default, whenever you are running publish, and actually, almost all the time, publishing the act itself only publishes whatever bundle of apps it created to the local registry, which means that it is only available within the domain. You can think of it as being something as private as a database. So anything in the local registry cannot be accessed by anywhere else. Now, let's go to the concept of App Store. So in this particular case, before we move on to that, so local registry A has internal app A internal, which is in dark green. Local registry B has B internal app. Local registry C has C internal app. And each one of them were developed by developers of that domain. Now, App Store, again, is the UI we saw earlier on, has a backend, and that usually is connected to 1 or more registries, typically 2. So it's always connected to the domain's internal registry, and it's also connected to a global application registry, which we call the Beacon app registry, and that's managed by Beacon. And that's what I mean by, app registry is managed by an entity. And obviously, like domain's internal registry, we want it to be a playground, so that playground, and also like, we have less policies around that. As in, you are free to, any developer in the domain is free to publish application or upgrade it. But the Beacon app registry is special because it is available to all the Beacon domains. So there is a workflow associated with that. If you're interested in publishing it to the Beacon app registry, you have to be registered as an app provider. And once you have, in your domain, we'll provide access so that you can publish it back. And also, not everybody in that domain can publish it to the Beacon app registry. You have to have certain roles. And when you push it back, we are not going to make it public right away. We'll first of all review it, and we'll approve it. Once you approve it, we have another tool that we'll not go into today, where you'll see the status of the app review process changing. And once it reaches the approved state, then you can say, hey, it's fine for me to just make it public at the moment. So the final decision is yours when you want to make it public to all the Beacon domains, but you can do it after it is approved. So that is the Beacon app registry and app store. Now, let's take a quick example here. Let's say we have in domain A, the domain at the top, we have, let's say, an internal developer, first of all, has published the app internally, the one in dark green, let's call A, and let's assume that it was tested out properly and it was ready for externalization. Then the app developer, after being registered as app provider with Beacon, then submits it for review, and we review it, approve it. Then the app is then published out finally to the Beacon registry, and that's the app called A1 in the bright green. Now, this A1 then instantly become available in all Beacon domains with App Store. So domain B and domain C, which are Beacon developer domains, will now have access to install it. So that is App Store and app registries. It's a very high-level view, but we thought that idea of how this works was very important because of the exact same misconception I was talking about. So the main takeaway here is that you always have your domain's internal registry that's local to you, and you already have Scaffold app, you have your local app registry, app store. So please feel free to, Scaffold, write new application. You don't have to do anything. It's just a matter of filling out the project details, writing some application logic, and hitting F9. So we want to make all the process that is not related to your writing your application code easy, like as easy as possible. That's the main point here. Now let's talk about the benefits of App Store. First of all, for Beacon customers on the right-hand side, obviously, one of the goals was to provide more options for optimizing your buy and build decisions. So that's obviously the number one benefit. Second one is, again, even if you, for the moment, are skeptical, and to want to just check out how things are, you can still publish apps to your internal registry because you already have one. You don't need to do anything at all. And you can use the same interface of App Store that Beacon App Store uses to make your internal application available to your internal users. I'm pretty sure it will be a delightful experience for them. And also you can, especially if you're a large organization, keeping track of different applications is difficult. So for example, there are many times in previous firms that I've worked for where we get to know about application very by chance, by searching some wiki or whatever. But with App Store, since it is centrally managing everything, it will be very easy for different divisions to discover your application. And we believe that will make things a lot transparent and more efficient inside your firm as well. The third one is your ability to control versions. So in Beacon App Store, every app has a unique name, and every app has versions, and versions are immutable. Like you keep on creating new versions. And when we roll out, you install a specific version, but let's say it has a problem, then you have the freedom of rolling back and rolling forward as well. So if you like that kind of behavior, you can use this versing feature as well. And finally, as I said earlier on as well, with App Store, we have created a framework for packaging and deployment such that you write once and run anywhere. So it makes it easy to bundle everything so that they can run in multiple Beacon domains. So, and by that virtue, if you start your projects with this framework, it makes it really easy if you ever think about externalizing your technology cost or investment. So that's the main benefits for Beacon customers. For app providers, as I mentioned earlier on, we really wanted to support any kind of framework to be easily available in Beacon. So we have added all the industry standard application development framework, and we'll add more depending upon your feedback. So it lets you bundle your existing IP without much plumbing. And also, Beacon App Store, as you can see, is it occupies a prime real estate in Beacon Desktop. Growing number of Beacon customers will be able to go to App Store, check your apps out. Even if you do not want to provide a full functioning version of your app, if you have a simply installable demo version, it makes it very easy for them to just install it, try it out. And that we believe is it'll greatly help for you to market your application and also makes your sales cycle more efficient and smaller, I guess. Those are the main benefits. So finally, we have developed different apps and modules on top of Beacon. And what we'd like to say is that, obviously, as part of the App Store development, we created these different tools. But again, we are Beacon employees as well. But we didn't want to do anything special that only Beacon employee could do. So what we did was we treated ourselves as the app providers. We created a Beacon domain, which is exactly the same as what our partner domains or customers would get. So we developed all these things from that domain so that we are not using any special tool at all. So we treated ourselves, and we take it very seriously. We want to make sure that this is a level playing ground. So I'd like to talk about a few of these. And you can go back to the App Store. You can check details about what each of these are. But the first thing is market data. So as Kirat mentioned as well, data is very important. It's required everywhere. And in the context of financial institutions, like getting market data it requires a lot of plumbing. And while you are, for example, writing a new custom instrument, you want to focus on writing the actual instrument logic, but then you might have to get data from different places. It would be a lot better if those kind of things were just solved at the core layer. So to address that problem, we created a market data plugin or market data module framework and have created different market data modules on top of that. Some of them are CME, FTR, Intex. We're working on Morningstar, Refinitiv. So all of these will be available in App Store so that you can focus on your actual application logic. One less hurdle for you to develop something useful for the business right away. And we have a lot of Glint apps. Some already existed. We rebundled them for App Store. Some are new, Trade Ingestion Dashboard, STP Dashboard, Portfolio and Book Editor. And I'll not go into too much detail about this. Now, next up is Beacon Plot Pro. Now, Beacon Plot Pro is an application that we created from ground up. It's the next generation of our Beacon Plot. So here we wanted to have more control over the UI to give an enhanced user experience. So we used React.js as the front end. At back end, we used pretty much the same back end, but with some modifications so that it can make use of the market data framework. Excuse me. Can you play the App Store video too? So we have a few videos here for you. By the way, the details of this, we have a YouTube video that goes to detail about Beacon App Store. But I'll just talk about a few things in the interest of time. So here, you can see there's a code editor or expression editor. Here it recognizes your keywords. It has code completion and all that. So let's say you want to plot Apple, then you can search for Apple, and there it makes use of the application, the market data framework, to find all the plugins that provide Apple. So we found something, the IEX plugin provided it. So I'll try to plot Apple close price using Apple. I assign it to a variable, and then maybe I want to do some transformation here. So I look at the documentation for rolling mean. I see that it takes 2 parameters. So you can see code completion. It can give you documentation as you type. You can see it takes a series and a window, provided a label. and F9 it, the beacon promise of F9. You can change, these are minor UI tweaks. You can change to range to maybe F9 it. And that is your Plot Pro. There are a lot more features we are adding to it. But yeah, I mean, that's Plot Pro. Can we pause it for 1 minute? I will just, so next up is, Beacon Notebook. So this is a new announcement, and this is a product that's not yet finished yet. We just wanted to give you a sneak preview of what it is. Now, many of you have asked us to create, make enhancement to the Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab that is available currently in Beacon. You first of all asked to have a feature where end users can launch it. We launched it. But then once you started it, we could see that you have a lot more requests that were made for Jupyter in particular. And I think it's really because of data science being a center of the technological investment in a lot of places. You basically wanted functions that makes things easier for data scientists or a special group of users who are not developers, who are still technical. They understand notebooks, they can make changes to it, they can play around with it, but they're not necessarily developers. So they may not necessarily have access to IDE, they may not necessarily have access to Beacon's Bob batch scheduler, they don't know about WIMP, but they somehow want to integrate it properly. So we reached out to all of you, and I cannot even take everybody's name, but we reached out to all of you. You give us with a lot of enhancement requests, suggestions. In some cases, you even shared some of your implementation so that we get a better idea of what this is. And so now we had two choices. We could develop each of these features in tandem and provide it as features. And as a platform, we did that, obviously that. So we have created a lot of different things, and I'm going to talk about that, so that you can use it if needed in one form or other. But we also thought that there's a need of a special product that is targeted for a special kind of user who are not using IDE, who are not using Bob, WIMP. They should just be able to use everything that's needed on their day-to-day task just from one app. So our goal here is to create a kind of a workbench for data scientists. And for that, can we continue this? Thank you. So Beacon Notebook is built on top of the next generation Jupyter architecture, will be available in Python 3.9. So it's a kind of a call to also test out our Python 3.9. So first thing we asked was, associating. So first of all, I'll talk about this notebook architecture. We have notebooks, and you didn't like public notebooks, so we're adding a virtual server where you can attach authorize and ACLs. So I'm here with simply executing something. We're making use of the plugin Market Data Framework to get access to data from IEX, the exact same Apple data. We got it from IEX directly using notebooks and plotted it out. Now, what I'm going to show here is the second feature we added, which was to basically be able to run notebooks, not only locally, but in any WIMP or any kind of host, which makes it very easy for you to launch, for example, a machine like GPU-based kernel, or kernels for other languages like R, Julia, and all that, but without having to go away from your notebook. So here you go, example. We launched the exact same notebook in WIMP now, and this is just running the same thing that we did locally in a WIMP pool. So as you can imagine, by being able to change the WIMP pool, you can, so for example, I can start a new notebook directly on top of a WIMP, and you can add these new things by, for example, changing options for what kind of machine you need, what kind of Docker image you might need, and so on and so forth. So the next one is the ability to schedule notebook, to run notebooks at specific times of the day and all that. Obviously, end users will not know how to use Bob. So the idea here is to have a simple GUI that you can use to do this. So for example, there's a simple notebook that I ran here, and you can see that, again, the current host is like an apps pool. This is where it's running locally. It's not a Bob job. It's displayed some current time. But you go to the Bob plugin, and you can say, hey, run it here. Now, for this thing, I actually created this in the morning. I actually ran it 2 times, although it is set to run only once every day. Ran it 2 times, and you can see that when you start this notebook, you can look at the end state after it was executed in the batch job. And you can see that you are running the Bob. It is a Bob job. and uses like the time and all that. So it makes it possible to have users create some logic, and let's say run it every day at 9 a.m. They don't need any special IT support at all. So it's all there. Now that's a sneak preview of Beacon Notebook. There are a lot of things we want to add there. For example, I couldn't mention earlier on, but we want to add support for a virtual file system so that you can attach users' role, permissions, everything, because you do not want all the notebook to be accessible by everyone. You want to make sure that the data, because notebook might also contain data and all that, right? So you might expect to create drives with different permissions. So we're going to add support for that. We also want to add support for making it easy to get data, because let's say you open Beacon Notebook. The first thing we're going to do is how to get data so that I can work on. Now you can obviously pull from internet. You can get it from S3, this, that, but we want to provide an interface that makes it easier to discover data, for example. Similar to Beacon Plot Pro, where you were wanted to plot Apple. I don't know where it comes from. I'll just go and search for it, right? So free from keyword search or directory kind of services where you can browse and find out the data that you need. So accessing data directly, working on that, creating ad hoc computation that could last a few days. You don't want to keep your application running, for example, when your data is being worked on. So we want to add support so that you can run this task either as a batch job or in an ad hoc manner, so that you don't even need to schedule it. So we'll add a lot of different features, and if you're interested, let us know. We'll give you. It'll take some time. We'll leave at least a few months, but we can be transparent about where we are regarding that, because I do know that a few of you are either working on something like this, or we want at least some part of feature. Now, finally, the rollout plan. Beacon App Store is already available in quite a few domains, in domains that were selected for beta testing, and you can go and play around with them even today. But in the coming weeks and months, we'll be rolling it out to more and more domains, and we might reach out to you if it needs any config changes, because it automates a lot of stuff, so it has some config changes as well. But the main thing here is feedback. So we obviously had some idea about how we want to go about it. And then we build something, but we really want to hear feedback so that, out of the many things that we want to work on next, we believe that, we just want to work on something that adds you immediate value.